Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Privacy Snapshot brought to you by Blue Sky Privacy. Privacy Snapshot is an opportunity where we focus on one narrow insight regarding privacy and data protection, and we have a brief conversation around that issue. And today I have with us Gabriela Zanfir-Fortuna. Hello, Gabriela. You might share a similar issue in that everybody's trying to know how to pronounce our last name, so I hope I did decently well with that. But today we're going to be talking about the role of the data protection officer. And surprisingly, 2.5 years later, 2+ years later, we're still talking about this, and companies are still really confused about what is the appropriate position of the data protection officer, and I'm speaking specifically, under the GDPR. And what tasks are appropriate for that role to have, where they need to report. So recently, and I've posted on this before, there was a decision that came out of Belgium by the Data Protection Authority there. And you're going to walk us through that decision, some of the important findings that are creating more conversation about this issue.
Absolutely. Thank you, Teresa, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thanks for watching us. Indeed, there's still a lot of confusion about the position of the data protection officer, and this is because there are strict requirements in the GDPR that the DPO has to be independent and has to be able to provide independent advice about the processes of an organization. The GDPR also says that the DPO has to report to the highest management level directly. So there needs to be this direct report, which technically means that the DPO needs to have a high level type of position in an organization. But what's really confusing is that the GDPR allows the DPO, the independent DPO, to have another hat within a company. The GDPR has a provision that states that the DPO can have other functions within the company as long as there is no conflict of interest between those other functions and the DPO position. Now, this is what's creating a lot of confusion out there because companies have taken this for granted, as they should. The GDPR allows it. The only problem is that it's very difficult to identify a position that's high level enough that reports directly to the highest management level and that at the same time is not in a conflict of interest with the position of the DPO. So there is some confusion about that. And indeed, we have this recent case from the Belgian DPA, which found that the head of compliance, risk, and audit department of a big Belgian company was in a conflict of interest because they were also the data protection officer. Then the Belgian DPA issued a fine of 50,000 euros and worked with the company to find a solution to get out of that situation of conflict of interest. Now, this raised, a lot of debate, and yeah, that's the short story.
It sure did, because typically the head of compliance is used to working in a more or less independent function. And so what was it specifically that offended, the regulator in this case?
The regulator believed that being the head of the compliance, risk, and audit department actually meant this person was directly involved in deciding means and purposes of processing. As far as I understood, at least one aspect of it is that the person, the head of compliance and risk and audit, was involved in how personal data of employees are going to be processed, managed. And even that mere fact would actually conflict with being able to provide independent advice about how the data should be processed. So this is actually, I'm going to quote a bit now from the decision itself. Well, it's an English translation that I worked on because the decision is available in French and Flemish. So the DPA wrote that the responsibility for each of these three departments unquestionably implies that this person in this capacity determines the purposes and means of the processing within these three departments, and therefore is responsible for the data processing. And the data processing is the responsibility of compliance, risk management, and internal audit. And this represents a substantial conflict of interest, making the role of the head of department incompatible with the position of the DPO. Yeah, so this is where we are right now. Again, this raised a lot of confusion, and this is exactly why the Future of Privacy Forum and Dublin City University are convening a webinar next week on July 8th, on Wednesday, where we are going to discuss, what's the role of the DPO? Where should the DPO sit in a company that's high enough to report to the highest management level, that's involved enough, because the DPO needs to be involved in advising from the earliest stages of the development of a processing operation. But at the same time, that's independent, and whether is it even possible that such a person can have another job and can actually share their time between the two jobs.
Yeah, so thank you. That was a quick but detailed look into that Belgian case. And to your point, this hasn't actually clarified the situation for many companies. So we will include the link to the upcoming webinar next week in our post, and a link to the decision, and encourage everyone who's listening to join, because again, this is an ongoing issue, and certainly we started to see enforcement around it. So it's important to be thoughtful about this requirement. So thank you, Gabriela, for joining us. And until the next Privacy Snapshot.
Thank you so much, Teresa.